Right in the middle of dinner, my daughter leaned toward me, smiling for the other guests, and whispered between her teeth, "Dad, don't eat here. You're an embarrassment." The table fell silent for a second. A couple of guests looked down at their plates. Others let out a muffled laugh. I slowly stood up, my face burning. I walked toward the kitchen, alone, completely humiliated. But there, between the shadows and the still warm dishes, I found the papers and the messages that could destroy all their fake smiles. If this story is touching your soul, please subscribe. Every day, there is a new story that could be yours. Tell us where you are listening from. The knife screeched against the porcelain plate. A tiny sound, almost nothing, like a fingernail on a chalkboard. But Loretta closed her eyes as if I had driven a shard of glass into her ear. My name is George Miller. I am 81 years old. I was a marine engineer for 43 years at the Port of Seattle. I built ships with these hands. I raised a family with my own sweat. I buried my wife, Alice, 2 years ago. That night I was sitting at my daughter's dinner table wearing my only good suit, the same black suit I wore when I put Alice in the ground. And my daughter looked at me as if I were a stain on her imported linen tablecloth. I cut another piece of my turkey. I chewed slowly, with my mouth closed, just like my mother taught me when I was a boy. But Loretta gripped her fork so hard, I saw her knuckles turn white. She watched me chew like someone watching a cockroach cross the table in the middle of a gala dinner. 12 people around the table. 12 strangers dressed in formal wear, their imported French perfumes and their gold watches glittering under the chandelier lights. I looked at them, and they looked at me. Or rather, they looked right through me, as if I were made of glass, as if I didn't exist. Judge Patrick Taylor, in his immaculate gray suit and Italian silk tie, was talking about a famous case he had won in New York. Diana Wells, the high society socialite, had shaken my hand when I arrived, like someone touching a dirty rag on the floor. She wiped her fingers with her napkin afterward. Isabel, Loretta's cousin, smiled at me from across the table with those perfect white teeth that hid pure poison. Her in-laws, Henry and Mary Jenkins, didn't even acknowledge me when they came in. They looked at me for a second, and then shifted their gaze. And Charles Austin, a partner at my son-in-law Andrew's law firm, whispered something into his ear while subtly pointing at me with his chin. I lowered my head and kept eating, like a dog who knows its place. I swallowed the bite. The sound of my throat swallowing seemed like thunder in the silence. Loretta looked at me again. This time she didn't hide the disgust. She pursed her lips as if she had bitten a lemon. She wrinkled her nose as if I smelled bad. I put my silverware down on the plate, slowly, being careful not to make a sound. I took the glass of wine to wet my dry mouth, to do something with my trembling hands. But the glass shook between my fingers. A little red wine spilled onto the white tablecloth. A small, insignificant red drop. But Loretta saw it. She closed her eyes for one long second, breathing deeply, controlling herself. And then she leaned toward me. I smelled her perfume before I heard her voice. That French perfume she wears. Too strong, too sweet. That always makes my stomach turn. She smiled for the other guests as she approached my ear. A wide, perfect smile, rehearsed in the mirror, the smile of an actress about to plunge a dagger. "Dad!" The word came out between her clenched teeth, almost without moving her lips, so no one else would hear. I leaned in to hear her better. I thought she was going to say something affectionate. I thought she was going to ask if I felt all right, if I needed anything. But what she said was this: "Don't eat here. You're an embarrassment." 4 words. She said them slowly, separating each syllable as if spitting them out, one by one, in my face. I felt the air catch in my chest. My heart stopped for a second. Something breaking inside me. Something deep that I didn't know was still whole. She gave me a pat on the shoulder, soft, affectionate for anyone looking from the outside, as if she had told me something kind. And she returned to her conversation with Diana Wells, laughing, drinking wine, talking about a trip to Europe, as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't plunged a knife into my heart and twisted it. A second of silence fell over the table, like a stone in a well. Diana Wells' fork hung suspended in the air, halfway to her mouth. Judge Patrick Taylor looked down at his plate, uncomfortable, not knowing where to look. Isabel covered her mouth with her linen napkin. But I heard the giggle, that sharp, venomous little laugh that drilled into my ears. Charles Austin cleared his throat and looked away. Andrew, my son-in-law, coughed hard and took a long drink of wine, avoiding looking at me. The in-laws, Henry and Mary, exchanged a quick, knowing, satisfied glance. No one said anything. But everyone heard, everyone saw, everyone witnessed my humiliation. And no one, absolutely no one, opened their mouth to defend me. Not even my granddaughter, Sophie, who was sitting at the end of the table, her eyes wet, biting her lower lip until it hurt. She looked at me with those eyes that remind me of Alice, as if begging for forgiveness. But she didn't say anything. No one said anything. The silence was worse than a scream. I rested both hands on the edge of the table. They were trembling. My fingers felt cold, clumsy, as if they belonged to someone else. My knees gave out for a second when I tried to stand up. My heart was beating so loudly I could feel it in my throat, in my ears, in my temples. My face was burning with shame, my eyes wet and stinging. But I wasn't going to cry. Not there. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. I neatly folded my napkin next to the plate, with care, with a forced calm. I pushed the chair back. The screech of the legs against the marble floor sounded like a scream in the silence. Everyone watched me get up. Everyone watched me walk toward the kitchen. Every step echoed in my head like a drum. 5 yards, 10 steps. I counted them, one by one. Behind me, the murmuring returned. The voices resumed. Someone laughed. The music kept playing. The dinner continued as if nothing had happened, as if I didn't exist, as if I had never been sitting at that table. I pushed open the kitchen door with both hands. Inside, the white, cold neon light hummed like a mosquito trapped in a jar. The smell of roasted lamb, fresh rosemary, and hot grease. The dinner I wasn't going to taste. Dirty dishes were piled up in the sink with leftover mashed potatoes and gravy. A fat fly buzzed over the remains of the dessert. I leaned my hands on the marble counter. It was cold, hard, like my daughter's chest. I took a deep breath. Once, twice, 3 times. I couldn't get enough air. I loosened the knot of my tie. I unbuttoned the top button of my shirt. My heart was pounding against my ribs as if it wanted to escape. Outside in the dining room, the laughter, the clinking of glasses, the soft music. Inside the kitchen, the silence, the hum of the refrigerator, the drip of the faucet, and me there, alone, trembling, humiliated like a dog in the house where I live, as a hanger-on, an intruder, a nuisance. I closed my eyes, and I saw her. I saw Alice in that very kitchen, 20 years ago, dancing while she cooked. She was swaying her hips to a country song playing loudly on the radio. She had flour on her hands, barbecue sauce on her apron, her hair tied up with a scarf. She saw me come in from work and gave me that smile that made me fall in love with her when I was 20. "George," she told me, "love isn't shown with pretty words. It's shown with presence, with being there, with not letting go of their hand when everything gets difficult." was always present. When Loretta got sick as a child, I put cold compresses on her forehead all night, without sleeping, watching her breathe. When she graduated from college, I was in the front row, crying with pride. When she married Andrew, I paid for every last flower in the bouquet, every last glass of champagne. When Alice was dying of cancer, I was there every day, every night, until she closed her eyes. But Loretta wasn't. Loretta was never there when she was needed, and now she throws me out of her dinner like a mangy dog. What did I do wrong? I said it out loud, without realizing it. My voice sounded hoarse, broken, as if it came from very far away. Where did I fail? Why does my own flesh and blood spit in my face in front of strangers? What did I do to this woman for her to hate me like this? The questions bounced off the walls of the empty kitchen. The hum of the refrigerator, the drip of the poorly closed faucet, the echo of my own voice. There was no answer, only silence. A heavy, thick silence that crushed my chest. I thought of Alice, and what she would say if she saw me like this, hiding in the kitchen like a coward, trembling like a scared child. "Don't let them get away with this, George," she would tell me with that firm voice she had. "You are worth more than this. You are stronger than this." But that night I didn't feel brave. I didn't feel strong. I felt old, tired, defeated, broken inside into 1,000 pieces that would never be able to fit back together. Then I saw it. On the marble counter, between crumpled up electricity bills and used paper napkins, there was a brown folder. It was open in the middle, as if someone had left it there in a hurry, without noticing, without closing it properly. I approached it slowly. My heart started to beat faster. On the folder tab, written with a thick black marker, was my full name. Miller, George. And underneath, a word that froze the blood in my veins: guardianship, pending. My heart stopped for a second. Guardianship. I knew what that word meant. To declare someone incapacitated, to take away control of their life, their assets, their decisions. I reached out my hand. My fingers were trembling. I touched the paper. Cold, real. It wasn't a nightmare. It wasn't my imagination. It was real. There was the answer. There was the reason for the looks of contempt, the awkward silences, the way they had treated me since I arrived at this house. Everything made sense now. Everything fit. And everything was worse than I had imagined. I didn't want to open it. Something inside me told me to get out of that kitchen, to go up to my room, to get into bed and pretend to be asleep, to leave everything as it was, not to look, not to know. Because what you don't know doesn't hurt. But my hands didn't obey. I took the papers out of the folder, one by one, slowly. Forms, letters, printed messages, bank statements. I put them on the counter and started to read. And with every line I read, with every paragraph I understood, with every falsified signature I discovered, I felt the floor sinking beneath my feet, the world collapsing, that everything I believed about my family was a lie. What I found in that folder could destroy them all. Loretta, Andrew, Isabel, everyone sitting at that table, laughing and toasting, while I was drowning alone in the kitchen. But first, it destroyed me. Because when betrayal comes from your own flesh and blood, from the person you carried on your shoulders and raised with love, it doesn't kill you all at once. It tears you apart, piece by piece, until nothing is left. 1976, the port of Seattle, under the January sun. The air smelled of salt, rusted iron, and hot tar. I was walking among the enormous cranes, with my yellow hard hat, my boots full of grease, my overalls stained with sweat. Then I heard the scream, Daddy! Daddy! I looked up. There came Loretta, running among the workers, dodging cables and tools, her black braids bouncing in the wind, her knees scraped from playing in the dirt, her white dress full of stains. Alice was laughing behind her, shouting for her to be careful, unable to catch her. Loretta reached me with her arms outstretched. "Lift me up, Daddy. I want to see the big ships." I lifted her up to my shoulders in a single movement. She weighed nothing. She smelled of chamomile shampoo and caramel candy. I pointed to the freighter we were building. "See that huge ship, sweetie? I'm building it with my hands." She clapped her dirty little hands and shouted so all the workers could hear. "My daddy makes ships. My daddy is the strongest in the world." Sundays were sacred in our house. Alice got up before dawn to make fried chicken and biscuits. I would wake up to the smell of butter frying, toasted spices, chili powder, and dough browning in the oven. I would stay in bed for a while, with my eyes closed, listening to the sounds of my home. The old radio playing country music at full volume, Alice singing off-key while stirring the pot, Loretta and Billy fighting in the kitchen like every Sunday. "Mom, Billy took my spoon from the batter." "Liar! She started it first." I would walk into the kitchen in my pajamas, barefoot, scratching my head, and Alice would greet me with a kiss on the lips. She had flour on her nose, sticky hands from the raw dough, her apron splattered with sauce. "This is your family, George," she would tell me, looking into my eyes. "Your best work, better than any ship." And I would look at that messy, noisy kitchen, full of love and warmth, and I believed her. With all my soul, I believed her. The beach house, the pines, I inherited it from my father, who built it with his own hands when I was a child. A pine wood house facing the Pacific Ocean, with a tin roof that rattled when it rained, and a long porch where we sat to listen to the waves break against the rocks. Alice planted bright purple bougainvillea at the entrance the first summer we spent there, flowers that grew to cover the entire gate and fell like a cascade of color over the fence. "This house is our soul, George," she told me one night, sitting on the porch, drinking wine, watching the stars. "Promise me you'll never sell it, no matter what happens." I promised her. I swore it to her with my hand over my heart. Loretta learned to swim there on that rocky beach. I would hold her in the cold water, and she would kick her feet, laughing her head off, swallowing salt water. "Don't let go of me, Daddy. Never let go of me." I never let go of her, never, but she let go of me. She let go of me a long time ago, and she didn't even tell me she was going to do it. I didn't have the money for Loretta's college, plain and simple. That's how hard it was. The shipyards were in crisis. They had laid off half the workers. My salary had been cut to almost nothing, and the tuition for law school cost a fortune that I didn't have. One night, when Alice was already asleep and the house was quiet, I got out of bed, walked to the closet, opened the drawer where I kept the gold watch my grandfather left me before he died, took it out of the velvet box, and looked at it for a long time under the moonlight coming through the window. It was the only thing of value I owned, my only inheritance. I took it to a downtown jeweler the next day and sold it for what they offered me, without haggling. I didn't tell anyone, not even Alice. On graduation day, 5 years later, Loretta walked onto the stage in her black gown and cap. I was sitting in the front row, crying like a child, unable to stop, without shame. She ran down from the stage with her diploma in her hand and hugged me. She squeezed me so hard, my ribs hurt. "I owe everything to you, Daddy," she whispered in my ear. "Everything I am is thanks to you." That was the happiest day of my life. I didn't know it would also be the last one like that. Then came Andrew, tall, skinny, slick black hair, Italian suit, gold watch more expensive than everything I owned, a lawyer for a big law firm in the affluent part of town. Loretta brought him home one Sunday to introduce him. The first time I saw him, he shook my hand without looking me in the eye. A loose, quick, cold handshake, like someone touching something dirty and wanting to let go fast. Afterward, he wiped his fingers on his pants. That night, in bed, when we turned off the light, Alice told me, "I don't like that man, George. He has empty eyes, like a shark's. There's nothing inside." I told her she was exaggerating, that the important thing was that Loretta was happy, that she knew what she was doing. I paid for the entire wedding, the imported Italian dress, the reception hall for 200 people, the 12-piece orchestra, the flowers brought in from out of state, the banquet with lobster and French champagne. I sold some stocks I had saved for my old age, for hard times. I didn't care. She was my only daughter. I wanted to give her the wedding that Alice and I never had because we were poor. But now I wonder if that was my mistake, if I spoiled her, if I gave her too much and taught her too little. The day Sophie was born, I arrived at the hospital before everyone else. Before Andrew, who was in an important meeting with a client and couldn't leave. Before the in-laws, who lived closer but took their time getting ready. I walked down the white corridors of the hospital that smelled of disinfectant and illness, my heart pounding in my throat, my hands sweaty with nerves. The nurse came out of the delivery room with a small bundle wrapped in a pink blanket. "It's a girl," she said with a smile. "Do you want to hold her first?" She placed her in my arms carefully. She weighed less than a sigh, less than a dream. Her eyes were closed, her tiny fists clenched, her skin pink and soft like a rose petal. Then she opened her eyes. Two dark, enormous, bright eyes. She looked at me, and I felt the world stop around me, time stop running. "I'm going to protect you always," I whispered softly so only she could hear. "Always, no matter what happens. I swear to you." Loretta, from the hospital bed, pale but smiling, looked at me and said, "Thank you, Dad." That was the last time she truly meant it. Afterward, they were just empty words. The cancer arrived without warning, like a thief in the night. Alice started having stomach pains that wouldn't go away, sharp pains that doubled her over after eating. "It's nerves," she would say, touching her stomach. "Stress, it will pass." But it didn't pass. It was weeks of pain, of vomiting, of being unable to sleep, until I finally convinced her to go to the doctor. The doctor sat us down in his cold office and looked at us with that face that doctors have when they are about to give bad news. He said the word that split my life in two. "Pancreas. Pancreatic cancer. Advanced. 8 months to live," he said. "Maybe less, maybe a little more, but not much more." I didn't sleep that night, or the next, or any of the nights during those 8 months of agony. I gave her the medicine at the exact time, never missing a dose. I changed her sheets when they were soaked with cold sweat. I cooked her soups she could no longer swallow. I read her poems by Robert Frost in a low voice, because they were her favorites, while she squeezed my hand with the little strength she had left in her bones. "You are my life, George," she would say with a thread of a voice. "You were always my whole life." Alice's last few days were silent. She no longer spoke because she had no strength left. She no longer ate because her body rejected everything. She lost so much weight that I could count her ribs through her translucent skin. She only looked at me. She looked at me with those dark brown eyes that I had loved since I was 20. Since the first time I saw her at a dance by the port, the last night I sat beside her bed, like all the other nights. I held her hand. It was cold, bony, almost lifeless. She moved her dry, cracked lips, a whisper so faint I had to lean my ear close to her mouth to hear. "Take care of the children." They were her last words. Then she closed her eyes. She squeezed my hand for 1 second, one last second, as if saying goodbye, and she was gone. Just like that, without noise, without drama. She was gone and left me alone in that room, with her cold hand in mine, with a hole in my chest that never closed and never will close. That night I screamed. I screamed until I lost my voice, until I was hoarse. I screamed the name of God, the name of Alice, the name of injustice. And from that night on, I was never the same man. A part of me went with her and never came back. The funeral was on a gray Saturday in August, the sky covered with dark clouds, as if the world was also in mourning. Billy, my youngest son, came from Chicago on the first bus that morning. He arrived with his eyes red from crying the whole trip, hugged me tight, and we cried together at the cemetery gate. But Loretta was late. 1 hour late. A whole hour. She entered the cemetery walking quickly, in high heels, looking at her cell phone screen. "I had an important meeting with a client, Dad. I couldn't cancel. I'm sorry." She didn't cry. Her voice didn't tremble. Throughout the burial, while the priest spoke and read Bible passages, while the neighbors prayed the rosary and cried, while I trembled with pain in front of my wife's casket, Loretta checked messages on her phone. I looked at her sideways and didn't recognize her. That woman standing next to her mother's grave, dressed in black but with her cell phone in her hand, was not my daughter. She was a stranger. A cold, hard, heartless stranger who wore my girl's face but had none of her soul. 2 weeks after the funeral, when I still couldn't get out of bed without crying, Loretta called me on the phone. "Dad, come live with us. You can't stay alone in that empty house. It will be bad for you. You'll get depressed." Yet her voice sounded sweet, worried, caring, like the Loretta of before, the one with the braids and the dirty dress. I looked around the house. The green couch where Alice sat to knit in the afternoons. The kitchen where we danced country songs on Sundays while she cooked. The bed where she died with her hand in mine. Everything smelled of her. Everything reminded me of her. Everything hurt. "All right, sweetie," I told her with a broken voice. "I'm coming." I packed a few things in a small suitcase. Clothes, documents, pictures of Alice, the letters she wrote me when we were dating. I locked the house. I got on the bus to Los Angeles. I thought my daughter wanted me close because she loved me. I thought she wanted to take care of me as I had taken care of her all my life. I thought that after everything, after death and pain, family was family. But Loretta didn't want to take care of me. Loretta wanted to watch me, to keep me close, to control me, to manage me, so I would sign what she needed me to sign, so she could stay quiet while they took away everything I owned. My dignity, my freedom, the pines that I promised Alice I would never sell. My bank accounts, my memories of my wife, the love letters, the wedding ring, everything. They were going to take everything. I walked into that Los Angeles house with an old suitcase and the foolish hope of an old man who still believes in his daughter. I didn't know I was walking into a trap. I didn't know I was walking into the mouth of the wolf. I didn't know that my own flesh and blood, the girl I lifted onto my shoulders at the port, the one who shouted that her daddy made ships, had set an ambush for me. And when I finally knew it, when I finally opened my eyes and saw the truth, it was too late. Or so I thought. because I still had one card left to play, and I was going to play it. The room they gave me was at the end of the hall, next to the washing machine. A small room, windowless, smelling of dampness and wet clothes. "It's temporary, Dad," Loretta told me as she opened the door, "while we fix up the guest room." I walked in with my suitcase. The mattress was sunken in the middle. The sheets smelled stale. On the wall there was a damp stain that looked like a map. I put the suitcase on the floor. I didn't say anything. I didn't complain. I thought it was temporary. I thought they would move me to a better room in a few days. But weeks passed, and months, and I stayed there, sleeping next to the hum of the washing machine, waking up to the smell of detergent. "Temporary," she said. A lie. The only person who treated me like a person was Della. Della Arriaga, the housekeeper. A 60-year-old woman, gray hair, rough hands from scrubbing so much. Every morning she brought me coffee with cinnamon, the way Alice liked it. "Mr. George, how did you sleep?" I would sit in the kitchen while she cleaned, and she would tell me the neighborhood gossip. That the neighbor across the street had split up. That the lady on the corner was secretly selling tamales behind her husband's back. I would laugh. She made me laugh. Sometimes she gave me a piece of bread with butter without Loretta finding out. "You need to eat, Mr. George. You're too thin." Della was my ally. My only ally in that house with cold walls. One day I went downstairs with a picture of Alice in my hands. It was my favorite. Her at the Pines, with a bougainvillea behind her, smiling in the sun. I wanted to put it on the living room shelf next to the other family photos. Loretta saw me and quickly walked over. "Dad, what are you doing?" I showed her the picture. "I want to put your mother here, with the family." She took the frame, looked at it for a second, and handed it back to me. "It doesn't match the decor, Dad. You'd better leave it in your room." I stood in the living room with the photo in my hands. I looked at it. Alice was smiling at me. I whispered to her, "Forgive me, my love. They don't want you here." I went up to the back room and placed the photo face down against the wall. I couldn't bear to look at her, smiling like that. While I was rotting away, one night I got up to get a glass of water. I walked barefoot down the hall, slowly so as not to make noise. Then I heard voices. They were coming from the living room, Andrew and Loretta. I stood still in the dark, pressed against the wall. Andrew was saying, "Loretta, there are some excellent retirement communities in Malibu, very quiet for people his age. We can go check them out next weekend." My heart skipped a beat. A community, a home. That's what they wanted. To get me out of the house, but what Loretta said was worse. Much worse. "Not yet, Andrew. First, I need him to sign some papers." Papers. That's all I was to them. A signature, a formality, a nuisance that had to be moved. One Monday I came down to the kitchen and Della wasn't there. The coffee was in the pot, but it was cold. The kitchen was empty. I waited. An hour passed, 2 hours. Nothing. I asked Loretta, "Where is Della?" She didn't even look at me. She was checking her phone on the sofa. "She doesn't work here anymore. We fired her." I felt a punch in my chest. Why? What did she do? Nothing, Dad. She was an unnecessary expense. An unnecessary expense. The woman who brought me coffee with cinnamon, who made me laugh, who gave me bread on the sly. An unnecessary expense. Della couldn't even say goodbye to me. She couldn't even explain. They took her out of here overnight, like an old piece of furniture that was in the way. Mr. Carlson lives across the street, 80 years old. A widower like me, a retired railroad worker. We were friends. We met the first day I came to live with Loretta. One Tuesday, he rang the doorbell. I was in my room, awake, looking out the window. I heard Loretta's voice downstairs. "Mr. Carlson, my father is resting. He can't have visitors." A lie. I was awake. I wanted to go down. I wanted to open the door. But I didn't. I stayed sitting on the bed, my hands clenched, feeling how they were slowly locking me in. Then I saw Mr. Carlson walk back across the street to his house. He was walking slowly, with his head down. He never rang the doorbell again. "Dad, we're going to buy you a new phone. This one you have is very old. It doesn't work anymore." Loretta told me this one Sunday while we were having lunch. It seemed strange to me because my phone worked fine. But I didn't argue. The next day, Andrew brought me a new cell phone. Small, basic, with large keys. "It's easier for you," he said with that fake smile he has. I stared at it. It didn't have internet access. It only made calls. "And my contacts?" "We transferred them to the new one," Loretta said. A lie. When I tried to find Billy's number, it wasn't there. Not Robert's, nor any of my friends from the port. All deleted. They had cut my lines of communication, and it took me too long to realize it. My meals started to change. Loretta served me small portions, without salt, without flavor. "The doctor said no salt, Dad. No red meat, Dad. Dessert is only for Sophie, Dad." What doctor? I hadn't seen any doctor. But I didn't argue. I ate what they gave me. Boiled vegetables, skinless chicken, water instead of juice. I started to lose weight. My clothes were too big. My belt no longer reached the same hole. One day Della had told me, "You need to eat, Mr. George." But Della wasn't there anymore. No one was looking out for me. No one saw me slowly disappearing. One afternoon, Loretta walked into my room without knocking. She had some papers in her hand. "Dad, I need you to sign here. They are bank transactions." She handed me the papers and a pen. I took them. I read the title, "Authorization for Fund Movement." Below, a line for my signature. "What is this, Loretta?" "Nothing, Dad. Transactions to organize the accounts." I kept reading. It talked about transfers, amounts, authorizations. "I need to read it carefully," I told her. She snatched the papers out of my hands. "You don't trust me, do you?" Her voice was cold, hard, sharp. "After everything I do for you, you don't trust your own daughter." She left, slamming the door. The house trembled. That night I went into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't recognize myself. Sunken eyes, surrounded by black circles, a few days unshaved beard, neglected, white, the skin of my neck hanging loose, my clothes floating over a body that was shrinking. "What am I turning into?" I asked the mirror. The old man in the reflection didn't answer me. I thought of Alice, how she looked at me when I came home from work. "You look so handsome," she would say, even if I was dirty with grease. She made me feel alive. Loretta made me feel dead. I washed my face with cold water. I took a deep breath. I have to call Billy, I thought. I have to tell him what's happening. I looked for Billy's number on the new phone. It wasn't there. I looked for it in my memory, but I hadn't dialed it in months, and I couldn't remember it completely. I rummaged through the drawers in the room, looking for an old notebook, any piece of paper with his number. Nothing. Everything had disappeared. Then I understood. They had isolated me. They had cut me off from the world, from my friends, from my own son. I was locked up in that house without bars, a prisoner of my own flesh and blood. And the worst thing was that I had walked in alone, with my suitcase in my hand, believing they loved me. But they didn't love me. They needed me, which is very different. The first time the in-laws came to dinner, I sat at the table, as usual. No one introduced me. Loretta introduced Andrew, Sophie, even the neighbor's dog that snuck in through the yard. But not me. I was sitting there with my clean shirt and my combed hair, and I was invisible. Henry Jenkins looked at me once, up and down, like someone looking at a stain on the tablecloth. Mary didn't even speak to me. We ate in silence. Well, I ate in silence. They talked about trips, restaurants, expensive wines. Things I didn't know about, things that left me out. When dinner was over, Henry told Andrew, they should consider a retirement home for him. It's best for everyone. He said it right in front of me, as if I didn't have ears. Andrew started explaining me to the guests, not introducing me. Explaining me as if I were a strange piece of furniture that had to be justified. Mr. George is living with us for now. He sometimes gets a little confused, old age. I listened from the table, chewing slowly so as not to make a sound. Confused, that's what they told people, that I was confused, that I didn't know where I was, that I didn't remember things. A lie. My mind was clear, clearer than his, but no one asked me. No one asked me to speak. I was the confused old man in the back room. That was my identity in that house. That's what they had made me into. One Sunday, Isabel, Loretta's cousin, came over. Bleached blonde hair, long nails painted red, tight clothes that didn't fit her. She walked in without greeting me. I was in the living room, reading the newspaper. I approached to shake her hand. "Hello, Isabel. How are you?" She looked me up and down with an icy smile. "Oh, George, you're so skinny. Don't they feed you here?" And she laughed. A sharp, false laugh that scraped my ears. Loretta laughed too. They both laughed, looking at me as if I were a joke. I stood there with my hand outstretched. Then I lowered it. I went back to the couch. I kept reading the newspaper. But the letters blurred. Not from tears, but from anger. Another night, another dinner. Guests from Andrew's law firm. I wanted to help. I wanted to feel useful. I took the coffee pot to serve the coffee, but my hand trembled. I don't know why. Maybe nerves. Maybe weakness. A few drops fell onto the white tablecloth, brown stains on the immaculate linen. Silence. Everyone looked. Loretta closed her eyes. She took a deep breath. "That's why I don't want you to help, Dad." Her voice came out cold, cutting. Andrew snapped his fingers and called the new maid. "Clean this up." The girl came with a rag. I stood there with the coffee pot in my hand. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the earth to swallow me. But I stayed there, visible and humiliated in front of everyone. One night, Andrew brought Judge Patrick Taylor to dinner. Firm business, Loretta told me. I sat at the table quietly, eating slowly. But at one point, the judge mentioned some maritime contracts he was reviewing. I worked 43 years in that field. It was my topic, so I spoke up. I also worked on maritime contracts, Judge, at the Port of Seattle. I can tell you about the conventions of the 80s, if you're interested. The judge looked at me with curiosity. He opened his mouth to reply. But Andrew spoke first. "Dad, let's not bore the counselor with old stories." And he went on to talk about something else. The judge looked down. I closed my mouth. Old stories. That's what my 43 years were. Old stories from an old man who was in the way. After that night, the dinners with guests continued. But I wasn't there anymore. The table had one less chair, mine. Loretta would come to my room before the guests arrived. "Dad, you'd better eat up here. It's going to be a boring meeting. Business. You won't be interested." And she would bring me a plate. Always the same. Boiled chicken, white rice, unsalted vegetables. I ate alone, sitting on the bed, listening to the laughter rising from downstairs. The clinking of glasses, the soft music, the life that went on without me. I had become a ghost. A ghost who eats unsalted rice in a room that smells like a washing machine. One night, while I was eating alone, the door opened slowly. It was Sophie, my granddaughter, 16 years old, long hair, sad eyes. "Grandpa, why don't you eat with us?" She looked at me from the doorway, biting her lip. I smiled. I didn't want her to see me defeated. "Your mom thinks it's better this way, sweetie. Don't worry." Sophie walked into the room. She sat on the bed next to me. "I want to eat with you, Grandpa." And she stayed. We ate together in silence, sharing the plate of bland chicken. She looked at me with those eyes that reminded me of Alice, eyes that still held love. That night, for the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. But the next day, I heard shouting. Loretta and Sophie arguing in the hallway. "I told you not to go up to Grandpa's room without permission." "But he's my grandpa, Mom. Why can't I see him?" "Because this is my house, and you do what I say here." A door slam. Sophie crying. Footsteps walking away. I stayed sitting on the bed, my hands clenched. My granddaughter had tried to keep me company, and they had punished her for it. Loretta was pushing her away from me, just like she pushed away Della, just like she pushed away Mr. Carlson, just like she pushed away Billy. I was the contagious old man that everyone had to be protected from. I managed to go out for a walk one Tuesday morning. Loretta was at the gym, Andrew at work, Sophie at school. I escaped like a thief from my own house. I walked slowly along the sidewalk, breathing the fresh air. Then, I saw Mr. Carlson on the corner. He approached with a worried look. "George, buddy, how are you? I haven't seen you in months." I didn't know what to say. He took my arm and said something I won't forget. "George, I don't like how you look. They are putting out your light." Putting out my light, that was the word. They were slowly extinguishing me. And I let them. Because she was my daughter. Because she was my flesh and blood. Because I didn't want to believe she was capable of doing this to me. That afternoon, I memorized Billy's number. I repeated it 100 times in my head until it was etched in my memory. I left the house with an excuse. I walked to the public phone in the park and dialed. 1 ring, 2 rings. "Hello?" My son's voice. My heart tightened. "Billy, it's me, your father." "Dad, how are you? You sound weird. Is something wrong?" Silence. I wanted to tell him everything. The humiliation, the confinement, the papers they wanted me to sign. But the words wouldn't come out. I had a lump in my throat. "No, son. I just wanted to hear your voice." He insisted. "Dad, are you okay? Are you sure?" "Yes, son. I'm fine." I hung up. I stood in the park with the phone in my hand. I couldn't tell him. I couldn't. If you're listening to this story, leave me a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Sometimes, knowing that there's someone in the world listening to me gives me the strength to keep going. I walked back to the house with my head down. I entered through the back door like a thief. I went up to my room. I sat on the bed. Outside, I heard Loretta arrive from the gym. "Dad, where are you?" I went downstairs. She looked at me suspiciously. "Where were you?" "Walking," I told her. "I needed air." She didn't believe me. I saw it in her eyes. That night, while eating alone in my room, I thought about the dinner that was coming up. The big dinner, the one with the judge, the partners, the important guests. Loretta had been planning it for weeks. I knew I wouldn't be invited. But what I didn't know was that this dinner was designed to destroy me, and that the greatest humiliation of my life was only 3 days away. I kept Alice's letters in a shoebox at the back of the closet, 23 handwritten letters in blue ink on scented paper. She wrote them to me when we were dating, when I worked on a ship and spent months at sea. My George, I am counting the days until I see you. Last night I dreamed of your voice. I read them sometimes when I missed her too much. One Thursday, I went to look for them. I opened the closet. I took out the box. It was empty. My heart stopped. I searched in the drawers, under the bed, behind the clothes. Nothing. I ran downstairs. Loretta, did you see your mother's letters? The ones I kept in the box. She didn't even look at me. Dad, those old things just collect dust. I threw them out. She threw them out. 23 love letters. 60 years of memories. She threw them out like trash. Alice's wedding ring, 18-karat gold, with a small emerald that I gave her when we celebrated 25 years of marriage. I kept it in a red velvet box next to my bed. Every night I looked at it before going to sleep. It was the only thing I had left of her. One Tuesday, I opened the box. Empty. The velvet indented where the ring used to be. I felt a chill in my chest. I went downstairs trembling. Loretta, your mother's ring. It's gone. She looked up from her phone. I don't know, Dad. You probably lost it. You know how you've been lately? I was speechless. I didn't lose it. I had no proof. I had no voice. I had nothing. One Friday, I took out the trash. Loretta had asked me because the new maid had the day off. I dragged the bag to the bin in the yard. Then I saw something. A piece of paper tossed among the fruit peels and food scraps. I took it out. It was a photo of Alice and me at the Pines, in front of the ocean, embracing, smiling. But the photo was torn in half. I was whole. But Alice had been ripped out, cut off, eliminated. I stared at the piece of photo that was left, my smiling face, my arm embracing the void. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Someone in that house was erasing Alice. Erasing her from the walls, from the drawers, from memory, as if she had never existed. I stopped sleeping. I spent the nights with my eyes open, staring at the damp stain on the ceiling, listening to the noises of the house, the hum of the refrigerator, the drip of the bathroom faucet, and the voices of Loretta and Andrew rising from the living room at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 in the morning. Laughter. The clinking of wine glasses, soft music. The life that went on without me. Sometimes I heard my name. George this, George that. But I didn't understand what they were saying. I just knew they were talking about me. That they were planning something. And me. Upstairs, in my damp room, unable to sleep, unable to go downstairs, unable to do anything. Like a prisoner awaiting sentencing. One Monday morning, Loretta walked into my room with a glass of water and a pill. Dad, your blood pressure medicine. I took it without thinking. But when I swallowed, I felt something strange. The pill was different. Bigger, more bitter. Loretta, this pill isn't the same as the others. She picked up the glass without looking at me. The doctor changed the prescription. It's normal. What doctor? I haven't seen any doctor. Andrew's doctor, Dad. Don't worry. She left the room. I stayed sitting on the bed with the bitter taste on my tongue. What doctor? What pill? What were they giving me? Fear rose up my throat like bile. But I didn't say anything else. I had no one to tell. One night I got up to go to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. The white light of the fluorescent tube hit my face. I didn't recognize myself. The man looking at me from the glass wasn't me. He was a thin old man, his eyes sunken in dark sockets, gray skin, dirty, grown-out beard, white, patchy, prominent cheekbones, his neck skin hanging loose. The man from the port had disappeared. The engineer who built ships had disappeared. What was left? A scared ghost in a room that smelled of dampness. "What did they do to you, George?" I asked the mirror. The old man didn't answer me. He just looked at me with the eyes of a cornered animal. That morning, between sleep and wakefulness, I heard Alice's voice. Clear, close, as if she were sitting on the bed next to me. "George, don't let them get away with this. You are stronger than this." I opened my eyes. The room was dark, empty, but the voice still echoed in my head. I got up slowly. I went to the bathroom. I splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror again. This time, I held her gaze. "You're right, my love," I told Alice, even though she wasn't there. "You're right. I'm not going to let them get away with this." But I still didn't know how. I still didn't know what to do. I just knew I couldn't go on like this. That something had to change, or they were going to slowly kill me. One Wednesday, I went out for an early walk when Loretta was at the gym. I needed air. I needed to see people who didn't look at me with contempt. I walked to the neighborhood market, and there I saw her. Della. She was buying vegetables at a stall with her cloth bag, her worn apron. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. She ran toward me. She hugged me tight, trembling. "Mr. George, what have they done to you? Look at you. Your skin and bones." I couldn't speak. I had a lump in my throat. She pulled me back a little and looked into my eyes. "They fired me because of you, Mr. George. Because I defended you. Because I told Ms. Loretta to treat you better." I took her hands. They were rough, cold. "Forgive me, Della. Forgive me." We sat on a bench in the park, away from people. Della spoke in a low voice, looking around. "Mr. George, I heard things. Before they fired me, Ms. Loretta and Mr. Andrew were talking on the phone. They talked about papers, signatures, and a beach house. They said they had to hurry before you realized what was happening." I clenched my hands. The beach house, the pines, Alice's house. "They also talked about a doctor," Della continued. "A man named Dr. Cameron and a judge. They said everything was already arranged." My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. "Mr. George, be careful. Those people don't love you. Those people want to destroy you." Before saying goodbye, Della reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Take this. This is the phone number for Mr. David Scott. Robert, you talked about him once. He's your childhood friend, right? The lawyer. Take the paper." I looked at it, a phone number written in pencil. "Call him, Mr. George. Tell him everything. He can help you." Della hugged me again. "Take good care of yourself. I'm going to pray for you." She walked away slowly with her bag of vegetables. I stayed on the bench with the paper in my hand. Robert, my friend for 50 years, the best lawyer I knew. He could help me. He could get me out of this nightmare. I walked back to the house slowly. Before going in, I folded the paper with Robert's number and put it inside my shoe under the insole. No one would find it there. I went up to my room. I sat on the bed. I had to call him. I had to tell him everything. But I didn't. Not yet. There was still something inside me that resisted believing. Something that told me, "She's your daughter, George, your own flesh and blood. She can't be that bad." I wanted to give her one more chance. I wanted to wait. I wanted to be wrong. But I wasn't wrong. And the proof came 3 days later, at the dinner with the judge. When my daughter looked into my eyes, smiled for the others, and plunged the knife deeper than anyone had in my 81 years of life. I already told you what happened at dinner. The whisper, the humiliation, the walk to the kitchen. Now I'm going to tell you what I found there, because that's what changed everything. I pushed open the kitchen door with trembling hands. The neon light buzzed like a mosquito. It smelled of roasted lamb, rosemary, and hot grease. The dinner I wasn't going to get to taste. I leaned on the marble counter. I took a deep breath. My heart was pounding my chest like a fist. Behind the door, the laughter, the voices, the clinking of glasses, the life that went on without me. And I was there, alone, my face burning with shame, trying to understand what I had done to deserve this. Then I saw it. The brown folder open on the counter was among electricity bills and used napkins, as if someone had left it there in a hurry without realizing it. I approached slowly. I saw my name on the tab. Miller, George. Written with a black marker in large letters, and below, a word that froze my blood. Guardianship. Pending. Guardianship. I knew what it meant. To declare someone incapacitated. To take away control of their assets, of their decisions, of their life. I reached out my hand. My fingers were trembling. I touched the paper. Cold. Real. It wasn't a nightmare. It wasn't my imagination. It was real. And everything Della had warned me about was right there, in that folder, waiting for me to discover it. I opened the folder. Inside were papers. Many papers. Forms, letters, printed messages, bank statements. I took them all out. I put them on the counter. My hands were shaking so much that I dropped some on the floor. I picked them up. I started to read. And with every line, with every paragraph, I felt the ground sinking beneath my feet, that the air was getting heavier, that something was breaking inside me, something I wouldn't be able to repair. My own daughter, my own flesh and blood, the girl I lifted onto my shoulders at the port, the girl who hugged me at her graduation. That girl was destroying me, and the proof was right there. The first document was a guardianship form, already filled out, already signed. It said, Patient George Miller, age 81 years, diagnosis, severe cognitive decline, incapacity to manage personal and financial affairs, signed by Dr. Victor Cameron, the Dr. Della talked about, the doctor I had never seen in my life. I read the date, the signature, the stamp. Everything legal, everything in order, everything false. I don't have cognitive decline. My mind is clear, clearer than ever. But there it was, on an official paper, with a stamp and a signature, the lie that was going to bury me. Then came the messages, printed from a phone, WhatsApp conversations between Loretta and Andrew. I read them one by one with trembling hands. If we declare him incapacitated, we can sell the Pines without his signature. Judge Taylor is on our side. I already spoke to him. There won't be any problem. We just need Victor to sign the report, and that's it. Judge Taylor, the same one who was sitting at the dining room table, eating my lamb, drinking my wine, while my daughter threw me into the kitchen. He knew. He was part of the plan. They were all part of the plan. And I was the idiot who hadn't realized it. There were emails, too, printed on white sheets. Emails between Loretta and Isabel, the cousin, the one with the venomous laugh. Cousin, take advantage before the old man goes. That house by the ocean is worth a fortune. $500,000 at least. Don't be foolish. And Loretta replied, Everything is all set. In 2 weeks, he goes to the retirement home and we can put the house up for sale. I grabbed the counter so I wouldn't fall. $500,000. That's what the Pines was worth. The house my father built with his hands. The house where Alice planted the bougainvillea. The house I promised her I would never sell. That's what I was to them. $500,000 with legs, I kept reading. Bank statements. Movements I hadn't authorized. Transfers signed with my name. $50 to an unknown account, $80 to another, $30 more. I didn't sign that. I never signed anything. But there was my signature, falsified, perfect, exactly like mine. They stole from me. They stole from me while I slept in the back room. They stole from me while I ate unsalted boiled chicken. They stole from me while treating me like a nuisance. And I didn't realize it. I was so busy trying to get them to love me that I didn't see how they were robbing me blind. At the bottom of the folder was a brochure, shiny, with pictures of gardens and smiling old people. The Oaks Retirement Home. Specialized care for older adults. Inside, a quote. Individual room, full board, 24-hour medical care, and a date written by hand. Scheduled admission, March 15th. I counted the days. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, they were going to lock me up. They were going to take me out of the house, put me in a home, and keep everything. The Pines. My savings. Alice's ring that they had surely already sold. Everything. And I was going to end my days in a room that smelled of disinfectant, looking out the window, waiting for death. But the worst part was at the end. One last message between Loretta and Andrew. I read it 3 times to make sure I understood correctly. I just need him to endure tomorrow's dinner, to behave in front of the judge and the guests. After that, it doesn't matter if he eats with us or not. He goes to the Oaks, and that's it. Finally, we'll be able to live peacefully. Finally, we'll be able to live peacefully. My daughter wrote that. My daughter. The one I carried on my shoulders, the one I clothed, fed, educated, the one who cried with joy when Sophie was born. That same daughter wanted me to disappear so she could live peacefully. I closed the folder, left it on the counter. I stood still for a moment. Outside, the laughter continued. The clinking of glasses, a burst of laughter from Isabel, Andrew's voice telling a joke. Inside the kitchen, silence. Only the hum of the neon, the drip of the faucet, the beating of my heart in my ears. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything on the floor. I stood still, breathing slowly, my hands resting on the cold marble. Something inside me had died. Hope. The illusion that my daughter loved me. Faith in family. All of that died in that kitchen, next to the smell of lamb and betrayal. But something else woke up. Something dark, something hard. Something that had been sleeping for 81 years. And that night, it opened its eyes for the first time. I straightened up. I took a deep breath. I looked at the folder. The evidence of everything was right there. Of the forgery, of the theft, of the lie. The rope they were going to hang me with was right there. But it could also be the rope I would hang them with. I reached into my shoe. I pulled out the paper with Robert's number. I looked at it. Tomorrow I was going to call him. Tomorrow I was going to tell him everything. Tomorrow I was going to start defending myself. I tucked the folder under my shirt and went up to my room. I needed to think. I needed to decide what to do with all this pain. I walked up the stairs with the folder pressed against my chest, as if it were a wounded animal I had to protect. The dinner continued downstairs. The laughter, the glasses, the music. They didn't see me go up. They didn't care. To them, I no longer existed. I walked into my room and locked the door. I sat on the bed. I placed the folder on my knees, and I stayed there, still, in the dark, listening to the beating of my own heart. Outside, life continued. Inside me, everything had stopped. I looked at the folder. I touched it. I ran my fingers over my name written on the tab. George Miller. Guardianship. Those words together. My name next to that word. It was like seeing my own tombstone before I died. I opened the folder again. I reread the messages. I reread the transfers. I reread the quote for the retirement home. Every word entered my eyes and burned me inside. The old man. That's what they called me. The old man. As if I had no name, as if I had no history, as if 43 years building ships meant nothing. As if having raised a daughter with sacrifice was worth nothing. The old man. A nuisance, a formality, a signature to get before he dies. I closed the folder. I pressed my eyes with my hands. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of making me cry. But the pain was there, in my chest, like a clenched fist that wouldn't let me breathe. I heard the dinner ending, voices saying goodbye, car doors, engines starting. Silence. Then, the footsteps of Loretta and Andrew coming up the stairs. They walked past my door. They didn't knock. They didn't ask if I was all right. They walked straight to their room. I heard the door close, muffled voices, laughter. They were happy, celebrating, probably toasting because everything had gone according to plan. The old man went to the kitchen and didn't bother anyone anymore. Perfect. Now they can sleep peacefully. But I wasn't going to sleep. I was going to spend the longest night of my life, staring at the ceiling, thinking, remembering, deciding what to do with all this poison they had made me swallow. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Soft, slow. They stopped in front of my door. I saw the shadow of feet through the crack underneath. Someone was there, standing on the other side. My heart jumped. Loretta? Andrew? Were they coming to look for the folder? I stayed still, holding my breath. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Then the shadow moved. The footsteps walked away. I heard a door open at the end of the hall. Sophie's room. It was her, my granddaughter. She had come to look for me and didn't dare to come in. She stayed there, on the other side, wanting to knock and unable to do it. I wanted to get up. I wanted to open the door and hug her, but I didn't. I was afraid Loretta would hear her, that she would punish her for coming to see me. So I stayed in bed, with a broken heart, listening to my granddaughter walk away alone down the dark hallway. What do I do now? The question spun in my head like a top. Do I call Robert? Do I confront Loretta? Do I leave this house without saying anything? I thought of Alice, what she would do, George. Cowardice is worse than defeat. She told me that once, when I wanted to quit a job where they treated me badly. But this was different. This wasn't an unfair boss. It was my daughter, my own flesh and blood. The girl I carried on my shoulders who called me daddy with her mouth full of caramel candy. How do you face that? How do you look someone who came from you in the eye when they tell you to destroy them? Because that's what I had to do. Destroy her, or let myself be destroyed. At 4 o'clock in the morning, I got up. I needed water. I needed to move. I opened the door slowly and walked down the hall toward the bathroom. As I passed Sophie's room, I stopped. I rested my hand on the door. It was cold, closed, but I knew she was there, on the other side, probably awake, probably crying. My 16-year-old granddaughter, trapped in this house just like me, with a mother who locked her up when she tried to do the right thing. "Forgive me, sweetie," I whispered. "Forgive me for dragging you into this." I wanted to open the door. I wanted to go in and tell her everything was going to be all right. But I didn't, because I didn't know if it was true. I kept walking toward the bathroom. I splashed cold water on my face. And when I looked up and saw myself in the mirror, I made a decision. I was going to wait one more day. Just one. I was going to see if Loretta showed any sign of remorse, any gesture of humanity. Maybe seeing me in the morning would make her feel guilty. Maybe remembering what she told me at dinner would hurt her. I was her father, after all. Something of the girl from the port had to be left inside. Something of the love she once had for me. I was going to give her a chance. Just one. If she came to apologize, if she looked me in the eye and told me she was wrong, I was going to put the folder away. I was going to forgive her. I was going to forget everything and start over. But if she didn't, if the next day she treated me the same as always, then I was going to call Robert. And I was going to destroy them all. I went back to my room. I lay down on the bed, but I didn't sleep. I spent the hours staring at the ceiling, listening to the noises of the house, waiting for dawn. When the light started to come through the window, I heard the first movements. The shower, footsteps, doors. Andrew going downstairs to the living room. Loretta talking on the phone. I waited. I waited for her to come up, to knock on my door, to come in and say, "Dad, I'm sorry. What I said last night was wrong." I waited an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. No one came up. No one knocked. No one came. It was as if I didn't exist, as if the back room was empty. I got up. I got dressed. I walked downstairs. Loretta was in the kitchen, drinking coffee, looking at her phone. She didn't even look up. "Good morning," I said. My voice was hoarse, rusty from lack of sleep. She kept looking at the screen. "Good morning, Dad." Nothing more. Not an apology, not an explanation, not even the decency to look me in the face. I poured myself a glass of water. I drank it slowly. I looked at her, waiting, begging inside for her to say something, to show something, anything. But she was still there, her fingers sliding across the screen as if I were invisible, as if she hadn't thrown me out of her dinner table in front of 12 people last night, as if she hadn't called me an embarrassment. I put the glass in the sink. I left the kitchen. I went up to my room. I took out the paper with Robert's number. There was nothing left to wait for. There was nothing left to forgive. That woman wasn't my daughter. She was my enemy. But before calling Robert, I needed to do something. I needed to talk to Sophie. I needed to tell her I loved her. That none of this was her fault. That I was going to fight. But I wasn't going to abandon her. I went down to her room's hallway. The door was locked from the outside. Loretta had locked her up, her own daughter, like an animal. I knocked on the door softly. "Sophie? Sweetie? It's me, Grandpa." Silence. Then a small voice. "Grandpa?" "Yes, sweetie, it's me. Open the door." "I can't. Mom locked me in. She has the key." I felt the rage rise in my chest like lava. My granddaughter locked in, for loving me, for trying to save me. I clenched my fists. "My daughter, listen to me. I'm going to get you out of here, I promise. I'm going to fix this." Silence. Then a sob. "Be careful, Grandpa. Mom is very angry." I went back to my room. I put the folder in a bag. I put Robert's paper in my pocket. I had to get out of that house. I had to act. But first, I needed to talk to Sophie one last time. I needed her to know the truth, to know why her grandpa was going to do what he was going to do. I walked down the stairs. Loretta wasn't in sight. I walked toward the hallway of the bedrooms. But then I heard the kitchen door, footsteps approaching. They weren't Loretta's. They were softer, lighter. I turned around, and there was Sophie. Barefoot, in her star pajamas, her hair messy, her eyes red from crying. She had managed to get out. I don't know how, but she had managed to get out. She looked at me from the kitchen door, trembling, and said the words that broke my heart. "Grandpa, are you okay?" I hugged her without thinking. I pressed her against my chest as if she might disappear. She smelled of chamomile shampoo, exactly like her grandmother. I felt her tears wetting my shirt. "Forgive me, Grandpa," she said. "Forgive me for not doing anything." I stroked her hair. "You have nothing to forgive, sweetie. Nothing. But I need you to listen to me. I need you to talk to your mother." We sat on the kitchen floor, leaning against the counter, talking in whispers. Sophie took my hands and looked me in the eye. "Grandpa, I overheard my parents many times. They talk about you when they think I'm asleep." Her voice broke. "I know what they're planning. I know about the house, about the doctor, about the retirement home. I want to help you, but I'm scared." I squeezed her hands. They were cold, trembling. "Scared of what, sweetie?" "Of my mom. Of what she's going to do to me if she finds out I told you." I felt my chest splitting in two. My 16-year-old granddaughter, afraid of her own mother. Trapped in that house just like me, a prisoner just like me. But she had the courage to come look for me. She had the courage that I didn't have for months. I took her face in both hands. I looked her in the eyes. "Sophie, listen to me closely. I need you to talk to your mother. I need you to tell her that I know everything. That I saw the papers. That I know about the guardianship, about the judge, about the Pines. Tell her to stop. That she still has time." Sophie looked at me with wide eyes. "Grandpa, she won't listen to me. She never listens to me. Try, sweetie, please. Maybe if she hears it from you, she'll think twice. Maybe if she knows you know too, she'll feel ashamed." Sophie was silent for a moment. I saw the doubt on her face, the fear. But I also saw something else. I saw determination. I saw courage. "All right, Grandpa. I'll do it. I promise." She hugged me again. "I love you, Grandpa. I love you too, sweetie. More than you can imagine." That night I slept for the first time in weeks. A light, interrupted sleep, but sleep at last. And I dreamed of Alice. I saw her at the Pines, sitting on the porch, looking at the ocean. She smiled at me. "It won't be long now, George. It won't be long now." I woke up with a light heart. For the first time in months, I felt something close to hope. Maybe Sophie could convince Loretta. Maybe my daughter would think twice. Maybe hearing her own daughter beg her to stop would make her feel ashamed. Maybe something of the girl I raised was left, a remnant of love, of decency, of humanity. I clung to that hope like a castaway to a plank. I didn't know the plank was rotten. I didn't know I was going to sink again. The next morning I stayed in my room, waiting. I listened to the noises of the house, the shower, the footsteps, the doors. Then I heard the voices, Sophie and Loretta, downstairs in the living room. At first they were speaking softly. Then the volume started to rise. Loretta's voice became sharp, cutting. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the tone. Something was going wrong, very wrong. I got out of bed. I walked to the door. I opened it a little. The voices rose up the stairs like smoke. "You have no right." That was Loretta. "He's my grandpa." That was Sophie. "He's my father, and I know what's best for him." Silence. A door slam. Furious footsteps coming up the stairs. And I was there, behind the door, my heart in my throat, waiting for the worst. My bedroom door burst open. Loretta entered like a hurricane. Her face was red, her eyes bloodshot, her lips pressed into a white line. I had never seen her like this, never in 60 years. "What did you tell my daughter?" She spat the words at me. "What did you put in her head?" I got out of bed. My legs were trembling, but I stood my ground. "I told her the truth, Loretta. The truth you're hiding from me." She laughed, an ugly, dry, humorless laugh. "The truth? What truth? Your old man paranoia? Your fantasies?" She took a step toward me. "Sophie is a child, Dad. Don't drag her into your delusions. Everything we are doing is for your own good. Why can't you understand that?" For my own good. They were robbing me for my own good. They were locking me up for my own good. "Loretta, I saw the papers." I told her, looking her in the eyes. "I saw the guardianship. I saw the falsified signatures. I saw the messages with Isabel and Andrew. I saw the retirement home quote." She turned pale for a second. Just a second. Then she regained her color and her fury. "You went through my things. You walked into my kitchen and went through my private things. They were on the counter, Loretta, in plain sight for anyone. Because it's my house, my kitchen, and you have no right to look at anything." She raised her finger and stabbed it into my chest. "Listen to me carefully, Dad. Those papers are to protect your assets. Because you can no longer do it. Because you are confused. Because you are senile. And if you don't like it, we can speed everything up and take you to the Oaks tomorrow." I heard the crying before I heard the words. It was coming from Sophie's room at the end of the hall. The crying of an injured child, an injured animal. Loretta strode out of my room. I followed her. She stopped in front of Sophie's door and pounded on it with her fist. "Open this door!" The crying stopped. "I told you not to talk to him. I forbade it. You disobeyed." Silence. Loretta took a key from her pocket. She unlocked the door. She walked in. I stayed in the hallway, listening. "Mom, please. Don't please me. You are grounded. No phone, no going out, nothing until I say so." The door closed. I heard the key turn from the outside. Loretta had locked up her own daughter. She had punished her for trying to save her grandfather. My heart was broken into pieces. That night I stayed awake, listening. At 11 o'clock, Andrew's voice in the hallway. He was on the phone. "Victor, we need to move the date up. Yes, this week. The old man is getting suspicious." Silence. "No, he won't put up any resistance. He's weak, confused." "Yes, that's it. Cognitive decline, exactly." Silence again. "Friday, then. Perfect." He hung up. I heard his footsteps walking away. Friday, 3 days. In 3 days, they were going to take me to the home. In 3 days, they were going to lock me up. In 3 days, I was going to lose everything. I sat on the bed, my heart beating frantically. I couldn't wait any longer. I couldn't give them any more time. If I didn't act now, they were going to destroy me. I got up. I opened the drawer. I took out the folder. And I took the paper out of my shoe. Before leaving, I checked the folder again. I searched through the papers to make sure I had all the evidence. Then I saw a message I hadn't read before. It was at the bottom, crumpled, almost hidden. A message from Isabel to Loretta. "Cousin, If the old man resists or makes a scene, we can tell Victor to put aggressive dementia on the report. That way, they can institutionalize him by force. Victor will sign anything, you know. Aggressive dementia. Forced institutionalization. That's what awaited me if I resisted. They were going to declare me insane. They were going to lock me up in a psychiatric hospital. They were going to drug me until I didn't even know my own name. I felt the fear like a cold wire down my spine. But I also felt the rage. A black, thick rage that filled my chest and gave me strength. My granddaughter tried to save me, and for that, they punished her. They locked her in her room like a criminal. They took away her phone. They took away her freedom. For defending me. For loving me. Sophie was the only good person in that house. The only one who still had a heart. And I couldn't let her suffer because of me. I had to act. That night, when the whole house was silent, I got out of bed. I got dressed slowly, without making a sound. I put the folder in a bag. I took the paper out of my shoe and put it in my pocket. I went downstairs, stepping on the edges of the steps so they wouldn't creak. I opened the back door. I walked out onto the dark street, and I walked to the main avenue. There I hailed a cab. "To Broadway Street, please, Mr. Scott's house." It was time to call Robert. It was time to fight. I arrived at Robert's house at 2 o'clock in the morning. An old 2-story house with a front garden and iron gates. I rang the doorbell. Once, twice. Silence. I rang again, louder. Finally, a light turned on upstairs. Footsteps on the stairs. The door opened. Robert appeared in his pajamas, his hair messy, his eyes swollen with sleep. He looked at me for a second without recognizing me. Then he opened his eyes wide. "George? What happened? What are you doing here at this hour?" I couldn't speak. My throat was closed. I just showed him the bag with the folder. He looked at my face. He saw something that scared him. He took my arm and ushered me inside. "Come in, sit down. I'll make some coffee." I sat on his sofa. And when the coffee was ready, I told him everything, from the beginning, without stopping. Robert listened without interrupting. I spoke and he took notes in a notebook. I told him about the back room, about Della, about Alice's letters thrown in the trash, about the wedding ring that disappeared, about the humiliation at dinner, about Loretta's whisper, about the folder in the kitchen. I showed him every paper, the guardianship forms, the messages between Loretta and Andrew, Isabel's emails, the bank statements with the falsified transfers, the quote for the retirement home. He read it all, slowly, his face getting more serious with each page. When he finished, he put the papers on the table. He looked me in the eye. "George, this is not carelessness. This is not a worried daughter making bad decisions." He paused. "This is a criminal plan." Robert stood up and started pacing the living room. He spoke quickly, as if thinking aloud. "Signature forgery, financial fraud, attempted illegal guardianship, financial abuse of an older adult, unlawful imprisonment." He stopped in front of me. "George, brother, with this I can destroy them. Your daughter, your son-in-law, the cousin, the fake doctor, everyone." I stared at him. The word destroy sounded strange to me. She was my daughter, my own flesh and blood. But she was also the woman who stole Alice's letters, the one who took my ring, the one who was going to lock me up in a home to keep the house, the one who punished Sophie for loving me. I took a deep breath. "Do what you have to do, Robert. But first, I need to protect my granddaughter." Robert called Billy that same night. He explained everything. My son took the first bus from Chicago. He arrived in Los Angeles at 6 o'clock in the morning with a backpack and a sleepless, distraught face. When he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. He hugged me hard, like when he was a child and was afraid of the dark. "Dad, I'm sorry. I should have come sooner. I should have called more. I should have noticed." I hugged him back. "Son, I didn't call you either. I was ashamed. I was afraid you'd think I was crazy." We cried together in Robert's living room, two men embracing with 50 years of silence between us. Then we wiped our faces, sat down, and started planning the defense. Robert worked for 2 days straight. He built the entire case. He called a friendly judge to get my accounts frozen before Loretta could take out any more money. He revoked all the authorizations and powers of attorney I had signed without knowing. He prepared a notification for Judge Taylor, who had dined at the house and was an accomplice. He contacted a handwriting expert to verify the falsified signatures. And most importantly, he located Della. He called her, and she agreed to testify. "Mr. George is a good man," she told Robert. "I saw everything they did to him, and I'm not going to keep quiet." When Robert told me, I felt my eyes fill with tears. Della, the maid who brought me coffee with cinnamon. Della hadn't forgotten me. Mr. Carlson also gave a statement. Robert went to his house and explained the situation. The old man was indignant. "George is my friend. I saw him slowly disappear. I saw him lose weight, fade, lose his spark. I would ring the doorbell and the daughter wouldn't let me see him. She said he was resting, but I knew it was a lie. That's kidnapping, counselor. That's a crime." Mr. Carlson signed a written statement. He recounted everything he saw, the times they closed the door on him, the times he saw George looking out the back room window like a prisoner, the times he found him in the street, thin, with dark circles under his eyes, scared. "That man was not confused," Mr. Carlson wrote. "That man was a prisoner." On the third day, Robert looked at me and said, "George, we have everything ready. We can proceed whenever you want. But first, I need you to make a decision." I remained silent, waiting. "I can go to the house with the bailiffs and do everything legally, formally, cleanly, or you can go first, talk to your daughter, tell her what you have to tell her, and then we'll arrive." I thought about it for a moment. I felt the rage in my chest, the urge to humiliate her as she had humiliated me. But I also felt something else, something older, deeper. I needed to look her in the eye. I needed her to know that I knew. I needed to tell her everything I had held in for 30 years. "I'll go first," I told Robert. "I need to talk to her, just once." I arrived at the house on a Thursday at noon. I opened the door with my key. I walked in slowly. I heard voices in the living room, Loretta and Andrew, speaking softly, with papers on the table, planning something, always planning something. I walked to the living room. I stopped at the doorway. They looked up. Loretta opened her mouth. "Dad, where have you been?" "We've been looking everywhere for you." Andrew stood up. "Mr. George, you had us worried." I looked at both of them, so elegant, so false, so full of lies. "Sit down," I told them. My voice was firm. I didn't recognize it. "I have something to tell you." They looked at each other. They sat down slowly. I walked into the living room, but I didn't put the folder on the table, not yet. First, I needed them to listen to me. I walked over to Loretta. I looked her in the eyes. "Daughter, I know everything. I saw the folder in the kitchen. I saw the guardianship forms. I saw the messages with Isabel. I saw the falsified transfers. I saw the retirement home quote." She turned pale. Andrew shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, can I explain?" "No," I cut her off. "Now you're going to listen to me." My voice was trembling. but I kept going. I carried you on my shoulders when you were little. I took you to the port so you could see the ships. I sold my grandfather's watch to pay for your college. I paid for your wedding with the money I had saved for my old age. I took care of your mother for 8 months, while you showed up once a week with a box of cookies. I paused. I buried Alice with my own hands. And when you invited me to live here, I thought you loved me. But you didn't love me. You wanted the Pines. You wanted my accounts. You wanted me to die quickly so you could keep everything. Loretta opened her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Dad, it's not like that. I love you. All of this was for your own good. For my own good? I interrupted her. Throwing my wife's letters in the trash was for my own good? Selling Alice's wedding ring was for my own good? Locking up Sophie because she tried to defend me was for my own good? Andrew stood up. Mr. George, this is a misunderstanding. We can sort this out as a family without involving lawyers, or there are already lawyers, I told him. There's already a complaint. There's already an investigation. Both of them were speechless. Robert Scott has all the papers, the falsified signatures, the messages, everything. He's preparing the formal notification right now. Loretta put her hands to her mouth. Andrew collapsed onto the sofa. I looked at them one last time. They were right about one thing. I am in the way. I'm in the way of their plans to rob me. And I'm going to keep being in the way until the last day of my life. I left that house without looking back. I walked to Billy's car, which was waiting for me on the corner. My son hugged me. Are you all right, Dad? I'm better than ever, son. It was true. My chest felt light, my head clear. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. But my job wasn't over yet, because Loretta had an organized brunch planned for Sunday. A gathering with all her elegant friends, with Judge Taylor, with Isabel, with Andrew's partners. All the accomplices were going to be there. And I was going to be there too, with Robert, with the bailiffs, with all the evidence. Billy, I told him as he started the car, on Sunday, we're going to finish this. On Sunday, the show ends. Sunday arrived with sunshine. A bright, clean day, as if the sky knew something important was about to happen. I was at Robert's house early, drinking coffee, going over the papers for the last time. Billy was pacing nervously around the living room. The two bailiffs were waiting in the car, with the notifications ready. Are you sure you want to do this? Robert asked me. I can go alone. You don't have to see her again. I thought about it for a second. I remembered the whisper at dinner, Alice's letters in the trash, the ring sold, Sophie locked in her room. I have to be there, I told him. I need to see the look on their faces when their little performance falls apart. Robert nodded. He put on his jacket. He picked up his briefcase. Then let's go. The brunch starts at 11 o'clock. We left the house, we got into the car, and we drove toward Loretta's final performance. We arrived at 11:30. Robert's car parked in front of the house. Behind it, the bailiff's car. I stayed for a moment looking at the garden through the window. The table was set with white tablecloths, fresh flowers, champagne glasses sparkling under the sun. Soft music was coming from the speakers. The guests were already there. The in-laws, Henry and Mary, with their expensive clothes and their stony faces. Diana Wells, with her enormous hat. Charles Austin, Andrew's partner. Judge Patrick Taylor, eating a croissant. And Isabel, the cousin, the one with the venom in her smile. All seated, drinking juice, laughing, as if the world belonged to them, as if nothing had happened on Thursday. Loretta had gathered them all. Perfect. That saved me the trouble of having to look for them one by one. I opened the garden gate and walked in. Behind me, Robert with his black briefcase, Billy with a serious face, and the two bailiffs with folders under their arms. 5 men walking slowly among the flowers and white tablecloths. The silence was instantaneous, as if someone had cut the sound of the world. The laughter died. The conversations died. Everyone looked at us. Loretta had a champagne glass in her hand, halfway to her mouth. She froze, her eyes wide open, her mouth slightly ajar. She knew that I knew. I told her on Thursday. But she didn't expect this. She didn't expect me to show up at her brunch, in front of all her friends, with a lawyer and bailiffs. She didn't expect me to destroy her on her own stage. I walked toward her, slowly, staring at her without blinking. I stopped a yard away. I could smell her French perfume, the one that turned my stomach. I could see the fear in her eyes. She was no longer the confident woman from Thursday who shouted that I was senile. Now she was pale, trembling. The glass clinked in her hand. "I warned you," I told her in a low voice, so only she could hear. "I told you there was a complaint. I told you there was a lawyer. But you didn't believe me. You thought the old man was confused. You thought I wouldn't dare." I paused. "You were wrong, daughter. You were wrong about everything." The champagne glass fell from her hand. It shattered against the floor. The glass broke into pieces. The golden liquid spread over the tiles. No one moved to clean it up. Robert stepped forward. He opened his briefcase on the table, among the flowers and fruit plates. He took out a thick folder and placed it next to the croissants. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said in a clear, professional lawyer's voice, "I regret to interrupt your breakfast, but I must inform you of a serious legal situation." He opened the folder. He took out the papers one by one. "Here we have falsified guardianship forms, forged signatures on bank documents, unauthorized transfers, messages proving conspiracy to commit financial fraud, and an attempted forced institutionalization without consent." The papers were exposed on the table, next to the flowers and the champagne. The evidence of the betrayal, in plain sight for everyone. The guests looked at the documents without understanding, or pretending not to understand. But they understood. They all understood perfectly. Robert turned and looked at Judge Taylor. The judge was sitting at the end of the table with a half-eaten croissant, trying to become invisible. "Judge Patrick Taylor," Robert said. The judge looked up. His face was pale, sweaty. "You dined at this house 2 weeks ago. You were present when Ms. Loretta humiliated her father in front of all the guests. And according to these messages I have here," he held up a printed sheet, "you were aware of the guardianship plan and had promised to facilitate the process. That is called malfeasance, Judge, and bribery, and abuse of authority." The judge turned red as a tomato. That is a misinterpretation," he stammered. "We shall see in the investigation," Robert said. "I recommend you get a good lawyer, one who is not yourself." Isabel got up from her chair. She grabbed her purse with trembling hands and started walking toward the door. She was walking fast, with short steps, looking at the floor, trying to escape like the rat she was. Robert stopped her with one word. "Miss Isabel Gavari." She froze. "Your name appears in 11 messages, 11 conversations where you advise your cousin on how to keep Mr. George's assets. Take advantage before the old man goes. That house is worth $500,000. Victor will sign anything." Do those phrases sound familiar? Isabel remained still in the middle of the garden. She was trembling. Black tears ran down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. She wasn't smiling anymore. She wasn't laughing with that venomous laugh. Now she was crying with fear. "I recommend you not leave the city," Robert said, "and do not delete any messages from your phone. That would be obstruction of justice. Andrew took a step forward. His face was distraught, sweaty, his eyes moving from side to side, looking for an exit that didn't exist. "Gentlemen, this is a misunderstanding. We can talk about this like civilized people. I didn't—" His voice broke. He looked at Loretta for support. She wasn't looking at him. Her eyes were fixed on the broken glass pieces of the shattered cup. Andrew swallowed. Then he did what cowards do when they are cornered. He betrayed his accomplice. "It was Loretta's idea," he said. "It was all her idea. I just went along with it. She convinced me. She said it was best for the old man. I didn't want to hurt anyone." Loretta looked up. She looked at him with a hatred I had never seen in her. "Shut up, you imbecile!" she screamed at him. "Shut your mouth!" But it was too late. Andrew had spoken. The bailiffs were writing everything down. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. Quick, light. I turned around. It was Sophie, running down, barefoot, her hair messy. She must have heard the shouting from her room. She reached the garden and stopped. She looked at all of us with wide eyes. She saw the papers on the table. She saw her mother pale, her father trembling, the guests petrified, the judge sweating. Then she saw me, and she ran. She ran toward me and hugged me with all her strength, with all her soul, as if she had been waiting for that moment for months. "Grandpa," she said, crying against my chest, "forgive me. Forgive me for not screaming, for not speaking up sooner, for staying quiet while they hurt you." I hugged her tight. She smelled of chamomile shampoo, exactly like Alice. "You have nothing to forgive, sweetie. Nothing. You were the only one who tried to save me. The only one who had courage in this house." I let go of Sophie. I walked toward Loretta one last time. She was still standing among the broken glass, her eyes red, her face destroyed, her makeup smeared. She was no longer the elegant woman who hosted gala dinners. She was a cornered animal. I stood in front of her. I looked her in the eye. "I already told you everything I had to tell you, daughter. On Thursday, in the living room. Everything I held in for years." I paused. "But I want you to know one more thing. I'm right here, still standing, still whole, still with a clear mind. I am not the senile old man you told Dr. Victor about. I am not the nuisance you wanted to lock up in a home. I am George Miller, marine engineer, Alice's widower, father of 2 children. And I still have a voice. I still have dignity. I am still alive." She opened her mouth. She didn't say anything. Tears ran down her face. But I had no more words for her. I had nothing left. Loretta collapsed onto the garden sofa. White, empty, destroyed, the guests began to leave one by one, walking quickly toward their cars, their heads bowed without saying goodbye, without looking back. No one wanted to be associated with that scandal. Andrew sat on a chair and covered his face with his hands. Isabel cried in a corner, her purse clutched against her chest. Judge Taylor almost ran off, talking on the phone with someone, probably another lawyer. The bailiffs gathered the papers, took notes, and photographed the documents. I stood in the middle of the garden, holding Sophie's hand, with Billy by my side. Robert approached and put a hand on my shoulder. "You did it, George. It's over." I looked around me. The trampled flowers, the stained tablecloths, the broken glasses, the stage of lies destroyed. But I didn't feel revenge. I didn't feel triumph. I felt relief. As if after years underwater, I could finally breathe. The following weeks were filled with papers, formalities, and depositions. Loretta and Andrew were put under investigation for financial fraud, document forgery, and financial abuse of an older adult, my accounts were frozen and recovered. The money they had stolen was returned. The falsified signatures were annulled. Dr. Victor Cameron lost his medical license and was reported for false diagnosis. Judge Patrick Taylor was suspended while his actions were investigated. Isabel disappeared. They say she went to Mexico to hide with some relatives. I don't care. I don't want to know anything more about her. That woman no longer exists for me. None of them exist. I just want to live the rest of my life in peace. I moved in with Billy in Chicago, a small house in a quiet neighborhood, with a front garden where orange trees grow. The first day I arrived, I breathed the air and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, silence. But not the silence of loneliness, not the silence of the back room, smelling of dampness and oblivion. This was a different kind of silence, a good silence, a silence of peace. Billy gave me the largest room with a window overlooking the garden. The sheets smelled clean, the mattress was firm, and when I lay down that first night, I slept. I slept 8 hours straight, without pills, without fear, without hearing voices planning my ruin. I slept like I hadn't slept since Alice died. Sophie comes to visit me every month. She takes the bus from Los Angeles on a Friday and stays until Sunday. We sit in the garden, under the orange tree, and talk for hours. "Grandpa, tell me about Grandma Alice," she asks me. And I tell her. I tell her about the fried chicken on Sundays, the dances in the kitchen, the letters she wrote me when I was on the ship. I tell her about the day we met at a port dance when she was 18 years old and had black hair down to her waist. I tell her about the day I proposed, with a ring I bought with 3 months' salary. I tell her everything so Alice stays alive, so Sophie knows her, so someone else remembers her. One Saturday, Della came to visit me. She traveled from Los Angeles by bus with a bag full of homemade bread and a thermos of coffee with cinnamon. When I saw her at the door, my eyes filled with tears. We hugged for a long time without speaking. Then we sat in the garden and drank coffee together, just like before when she brought it to the back room. "Mr. George, you are the bravest man I know," she told me. "You stood up to your own daughter. You stood up to all those powerful people. Not everyone does that." I shook my head. "I'm not brave, Della. I just got tired of being afraid. I got tired of letting them walk all over me. Sometimes courage is nothing more than that. Getting tired of being afraid." 2 months ago, I traveled to Seattle. I took the bus early, alone. I needed to do something I had been putting off. I arrived at the cemetery at 11 o'clock in the morning. I walked among the graves until I found Alice's. It was clean, with fresh flowers someone had placed there. Maybe a neighbor. I knelt on the grass. I put my hand on the tombstone. The marble was cold, but I felt her warmth. "My love," I told her. "I did it. I didn't let myself be destroyed. I protected what we built together. The Pines is still ours. No one is going to erase you from the walls. No one is going to throw you in the trash." I stayed there for a long time, talking to her, crying, telling her everything. When I left, I felt her walking with me. 3 months after everything, a letter arrived. Loretta's handwriting. My hand trembled when I opened it. It said, "Dad, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know what I did is beyond words. But I needed to write to tell you I'm sorry. I don't know when I became this person. I don't know when I lost my way. But I did. And I hurt you. I hurt you in the worst way. I don't expect you to answer me. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know that I think about you every day. And that I regret it. Your daughter, Loretta." I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it and put it in a drawer. I didn't reply. Maybe someday I will. But not yet. I'm not ready yet. People ask me if I forgave her, if I will ever forgive her. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. What I do know is that I don't hate her. Hate is a prison, and I've been locked up for too long. I was locked up in the back room, a prisoner of shame, a prisoner of the fear of being alone. I don't want another prison. I don't want to carry that weight, so I don't hate her. But forgiveness is something else. Forgiveness is letting go of the pain, and the pain is still there. Every time I remember the whisper at dinner, every time I remember Alice's letters thrown in the trash, every time I remember Sophie crying, punished for defending me. That pain doesn't go away with a letter. That pain takes time, a lot of time. I learned something these past few months, something that took me 81 years to understand. Family is not blood. Family is not the last name, or the genes, or the obligation. Family is respect. It is presence. It is knowing that someone is looking out for you without expecting anything in return. Della, who brought me coffee with cinnamon when no one was looking, is family. Mr. Carlson, who warned me they were putting out my light, is family. Robert, who dropped everything to defend me, is family. Billy, who came from out of state and opened his home to me, is family. Sophie, who dared to speak up when everyone else was silent, is family. They are my family. The ones who were there, the ones who stayed, the ones who saw me fall and helped me get back up. Alice's ring turned up. It was among the assets Loretta had sold to a downtown jeweler. Robert tracked it down. He bought it back with the recovered money from the accounts, and he brought it to me one Sunday. When I opened the red velvet box and saw it shining there, with the small emerald I gave her for our 25th wedding anniversary, I couldn't hold back the tears. I took it out of the box, looked at it for a long time, kissed it, and put it on a silver chain hanging around my neck. Now I always wear it close to my heart, where Alice should be. Sometimes I touch it over my shirt, and I feel like she's there, watching over me, as she always did. Now I walk every morning. I go out early, when the air is still fresh, and I walk around the neighborhood for an hour. I greet the neighbors. I pet the dogs. I look at the trees, the flowers, the sky. I started eating well again. I started sleeping well again. I started looking in the mirror and recognizing myself. The man from the port is coming back. The engineer who built ships is coming back. George Miller is coming back. Sometimes I think of Alice and I smile. Sometimes I think of Loretta, and it hurts. But I keep going. Because that's what old port workers do. We keep going, against the wind, against the current, against everything. I wasn't eating badly. I wasn't an embarrassment. I wasn't confused or senile or incapacitated. I was just in the way of my daughter's plans. I was in the way because I owned a house she wanted to sell. I was in the way because I had bank accounts she wanted to empty. I was in the way because I was alive. But I didn't let myself be destroyed. I didn't let myself be buried. And now I'm here, telling you my story so you know that it's possible, that it's always possible, that age doesn't matter, or the situation, or the fear. You can always hold your head up and say, enough. Because a man is not what others say he is. A man is what he chooses to do with his pain. And you? Did anyone ever make you feel like you were in the way? That your presence was a nuisance? That everything you gave was worthless? If so, I want you to know that you are not alone. That your story matters. That your pain is real. But so is your strength. If this story touched your heart, I ask you to share it, subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment telling me how you felt, what you thought. If something similar happened to you, your message could be the light someone else needs to take the first step. Until the next story.